We're live.
Here we go.
Blue Bloods, episode 39, the Blue Bloods podcast.
I must admit, our theme song to me never gets old. It never gets old.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube right now, like you've got to go to Spotify or Apple or Google or wherever you listen to podcasts and like go listen to our intro song. Because it's not on YouTube because we'll get a copyright strike for it, so
Every
they won't let us
time.
use it. But if you're listening on a streaming platform, go listen because, yeah, I mean, like every time I listen to it, it's like I'm hearing it for the first time.
It's so good. It's super creative.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we ripped off old boy.
Asher
and
Roth.
we just made it better. We made it related to college sports.
What is it, Michelangelo, that says greatness is just taking somebody else's idea and making it better?
And then
Da
we've
Vinci,
got
one of those guys.
And then we got Gus Johnson on there. I mean, come on.
Gus, man, from the West Side. I love Gus. Gus, to me, is my favorite college commentator.
Speaking of Gus, I hope he's okay. Because did you see over the weekend?
Yeah.
In fact, we actually did not even plan on talking about this, so I don't know
we
what
didn't.
the follow-up is. But he had to leave at halftime of, was it OU Nebraska?
Nebraska
he was
OU.
calling?
Yeah. Well, Klatt tweeted afterwards, later that night, and said he was fine and he'll be back to call because they're calling Michigan Maryland this weekend. So he said he was fine. So they didn't go into details of what it is, but Klatt did tweet at like 8 p.m. on Saturday that he was fine. He'll be good to go next week. Thanks everybody for understanding. So yeah, that was a little shocker because I love Gus.
He's on our theme song. I mean, like, who doesn't love Gus?
And on top of that, he's from Detroit, so it's just much love for Gus.
Okay, so if you're listening and you've been tracking with us this season, you've kind of probably picked up on our template now. We're going to talk top 25 matchups.
Yep.
We're going to talk our biggest surprise. We're going to talk our biggest disappointment, our biggest overreaction or overrated from week 3. And then we'll do a look ahead to week 4. And typically what we like to do is pick out a game that doesn't feature our favorite team, which if you've listened ever, even if you've only listened to one episode,
you should know.
You know where our loyalties are and where our loyalties reside. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, it's pretty
clear,
evident.
That's all right.
So, all right, man, you want to get right into it with top 25?
Yeah, top 25 matchups.
We had BYU, Oregon, Miami, A&M. Which one you want to start with?
I mean, we can start with the one that came on first, BYU, Oregon. Shocking, but kind of not shocking. BYU coming off a tough game the week prior, and then the jump to play Oregon. I say all that to say is how good is freaking Georgia? Because Oregon just freaking steamrolled BYU, and it didn't even like look close. That's the Oregon team I expected to show up week 1. But it's the thing that I think I've been saying from the get-go with Oregon is which Bo Nix are you going to get? When you have Bo Nix that's playing good football, that's the Oregon you're going to get. When you have Bo Nix that's playing like, some of what it looked like majority of his career at Auburn was, you get the Georgia game. And I think that's just going to be what happens with Oregon this year is which Bo Nix week in, week out. Can he be consistent enough week in, week out to show up and do what he does? But, man, Oregon just looked faster. They look stronger. They look better. It really didn't look competitive from BYU's standpoint. And I was in and out kind of on that game, but it's the game I paid attention to the most. But I'll say all this to say is like Oregon, they look good. I don't know if they looked great. I don't know if I left that game going, wow, they're going to challenge USC. I was just like, okay, like good game. It was an okay game. I just expected more from BYU.
Yeah, I did too, but I also, being that my team plays at BYU in a couple of weeks, I think you gotta also take into account they've got a very unique home field advantage, in my opinion. Right, when BYU's at home, just whether because of the altitude and it's the timing of those games typically. Not that it excuses them just getting absolutely pounded by Oregon, and not to take anything away from Oregon, but my big takeaway was I saw some Arkansas fans saying, "Oh yeah, y'all still worried about BYU? Y'all still worried about BYU?" Yeah, I am, because we're at BYU, and when we're traveling to that time zone, to that altitude, like it's just same for Baylor. Like I still think Baylor's a better team.
Yeah,
and they got up there in a late night game. There's just a lot of other factors that can influence the outcome when you're at BYU, and BYU has a good team still, and I think they'll still have a good season, but they've got for an independent schedule, they've got I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's like the heart of the Big Ten or heart of the SEC, but for an independent, I mean, it's a tougher schedule than what Notre Dame's playing.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I kind of had that game on too, sort of in and out on it. But one I did watch, I'll tell you what, it was a boring game to me, and that was A&M Miami.
I fell asleep.
Yeah, obviously A&M losing to App State sort of took away some of the luster that this game would have had to offer, including, I mean, if someone had put out there on social media, dang, App State took the dub and took College Game Day from A&M, because obviously College Game Day would have been in College Station had they won that game. But just a boring, and I actually like defensive games, but this wasn't a game where it felt like I'm watching great defense. It was Miami's offense looked awful and out of sync. A&M's offense didn't look great either. They had some explosive plays. They had their return man got them in some good positions as well offensively, but it just was such a boring game from a standpoint that like Miami would get it and they couldn't really. I mean, they'd move the ball and then they wouldn't. It's kind of like, and I think Cowboys fans will understand what I mean by this, but it's kind of like watching a Cowboys game. I'd love to say in the early 2000s, but unfortunately we still have games like that even this season and over the last decade, but where you're just like, okay, how long until we have a penalty offset this drive? Or, hey, we're moving the ball. Okay, how it's only a matter of time before we punt it or have to settle for a field goal yet again, or we have a holding penalty that puts us out of field goal range, or we have a holding penalty that kills a good drive. And I'm not necessarily saying so much the penalties, even though Miami did have some, but it was kind of like watching, to me, a Cowboys game where you're going, it's not that we're up against just this stifling defense like a Georgia or something. Right. We're just, I mean, we can't execute. We're dropping passes. We're hurting ourselves more than the defense is hurting us. And that's kind of how it felt. I was pulling for Miami for this reason, even though App State already took care of A&M. And this is getting back to my Arkansas fandom. And I'm going to talk about this later, but Arkansas's next 2 weeks, I feel like, are really going to tell me and college football fans what the ceiling is for this squad. Yeah, we've got A&M and Bama back to back. Right. Now, after those two games, Bama and A&M play. And I had a buddy who said the SEC officiating crews, which we all know what they're notorious for, but they are going to do everything in their power to protect an undefeated A&M versus an undefeated Bama, a Jimbo versus Saban rematch. Right. Well, A&M losing last week to App State. Deal. Yeah. It actually kind of helps Arkansas's case because now the SEC is going to be better benefited by an undefeated Arkansas versus an undefeated Bama, which at that point will be a top 10 matchup, at least. And game day will be in Fayetteville, which is good for the SEC. Awesome. That'd be good. But anyways, I was also kind of just hoping Miami would win just because it seems like some wheels are already falling off with the Aggies since that loss. They've got these guys going viral with their yell practice, which that is just the weirdest, oddest thing. It.
Somebody get their mans, bro.
They've got freshmen from this, amazing unreal recruiting class getting suspended. And so I just thought, man, maybe if they could just lose again they just kind of stumble into that Arkansas game, because I do have some concerns still with Arkansas, and I'll talk about those later. But anyways, boring game. There wasn't really like, a big highlight. Someone really stood out to me. It was just kind of like.
Well, my thing with Miami, so I saw the stat. Miami was the first team since 2000 to have 27-plus first downs without a touchdown. God. This goes back to what I said about Miami at the top of the year. And Miami fans can come after me if they want to. They were so pumped. Cristobal, I like him. I think I still believe he can do some cool things in Miami. But everyone, the big hire, everyone was so pumped about all offseason at Miami, outside of the head coach, was the offensive coordinator that they so-called poached for Michigan, Josh Gaddis. And I want to like plant my flag here on this Josh Gaddis thing. Everyone was, we got the Royals award-winning offensive coordinator. Miami just got to see what happened the last 4 years Josh Gaddis was at Michigan. Everyone's focusing on last season at Michigan. I said this before in the pod. I'll say this again, Miami fans. He is not who you think he is. The 1 year that Michigan had a pretty explosive offense was the 1 year Jim Harbaugh finally said, I'm going to bring in a co-offensive coordinator. We're going to do a play calling by committee. We're going to run this offense by committee. You're no longer solo in charge. And we pump out the greatest offensive year Michigan has had in the last decade. Last year we beat Ohio State. It was a great. Jim Harbaugh said, you know what, the speed and space thing is cool. We're going to go back to, running a pistol, running the football, then get into it. And if you look at the offense Michigan is running right now, though it's been a cupcake non-conf, this is the offense Gaddis has swore that he was going to bring to Michigan. Oddly, that we're finally running that when he's gone. So I'm not shocked. I was actually shocked. And everyone's saying, well, they use that, and they put 70 on Bethune-Cookman. I love HBCUs. Bethune-Cookman, I mean, bro, they can't play probably against Allen High School in Texas right now. Like, they're not that good. So I think, unfortunately, yes, I think Cristobal is going to do some great things. I think as long as you have Josh Gaddis there, your offense is going to be inept. It's going to be anemic. You're going to see a lot of I watched part of that game going, this is how I felt as a Michigan fan the last 3-4 years with you as my offensive coordinator, and I'm so glad I don't feel this way anymore, because it's like first down, and then you get to the red zone, you can't score. You can't there's no explosive plays. There's no 20-plus, there's nothing. It's just like, ugh. So, I mean, I wanted it to be a better game. It just felt sloppy. Like, it felt like the Dollar General version of a big-time game. Matter of fact, I think the game down at Appalachian State was way better, personally. I might say, man, I might be an App State fan this year, man. I'm watching these guys. I like what they're doing. I like what Chase Bryce is. I mean, they're a good team. I mean, the walk-off Hail Mary, it couldn't get better than. So all I have to say is A&M Miami, I mean, and we felt it all offseason. Week 3, this is going to be a big game. The U is back. Cristobal, Jimbo Fisher, and it just it failed to deliver, in my opinion.
In Michigan, don't they have like a top 3 scoring offense right now?
Mm-hmm.
And here's what's crazy about that. To your point, yes, they've played cupcakes. But that's not even what their team is built to do. That's not even what that offense is designed to do. Like, that's an offense that, like, once they get into the heart of conference, if they win, 24-14, 31-17, like, it's not an offense that's got to go score 50 points a game to give the team a chance. It's not even that type of – it's not even an offense designed to score 50 points a game, but they are right now just because they're so dominant on these teams. But I'm curious to watch them, because I'm really, the more and more – we get into the season, the more and more I'm wanting a 11-0 versus 11-0 the day after, not the day after, but 2 days after Thanksgiving.
Which I think is possible. I think, and I'll say this because I'm probably not going to talk about Michigan a lot today, because I have other things to talk about. I'll say this. I think obviously I watched this past week. JJ was sharp. He wasn't Hawaii sharp, but he was sharp. But I've come to realize this, Trey, about Michigan, and this me being objective. They got this. They have the talent on the outside. They're actually more talented in the wide receiver room this year than they are in the running back room, in my personal opinion. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a year that and seeing how they're doing play calling with Roman Wilson on the outside. You got Ronnie Bell. You got Cornelius Johnson, who I think Mel Kiper's predicting to be like a day 2, day 3 pick. You got some talent there. It wouldn't shock me if they start posting 38, 35, 40 points a game. And then you put JJ in there, who just even on a so-so day that we just had, the talent he brings, it just opens up the offense so much more when you got a quarterback that can do that with his legs. No, I'm saying this subjectively. The dude has an NFL arm. He has the NFL package right now. It just changes the game for you, and where you can go from, last year, and I love Cade, where, man, if you throw a pick, you're like, if we get behind, can we score? Versus to
right.
If JJ throws a pick, I'm like, I would prefer you not to, but I think, I'm not worried. Can we go score in a minute next? I'm just not. So I am interested to see how this. And especially what we saw from Michigan State. We'll talk about that later, and some of these other teams in the Big Ten East. I really think this 11-0 versus 11-0 going into the shoe thing can happen, and that's what college football is all about, man. I think everybody would like to see that.
Yeah, there's not that pressure on Michigan this year to, like, quote unquote, stay on schedule with the offense and not get behind the chains, and maybe even rely on your defense or special teams to get you a
turnover,
very opportune turnover, or even a score. But all right, let's get to surprise or surprises from week 3.
Go ahead, man. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, my first one is Florida State. Is that
they're on my list. They were on my list.
Okay, good. I'm glad I went first then, because that was the Friday night game. I really didn't expect to get locked in on that game. I sort of just put it on the TV and had some family stuff going on. And as I kept circling back to check on it, I was like, man, this is a good game. By the second half, things in my house had sort of just settled down, and I just locked in, and I was into that game. And I can't figure out Florida State. Who are they? It's they're not good, but they're loaded with some, NFL talent at certain spots. They don't play very well, but then all of a sudden they win. And it seems like they're only getting more and more confident. I think Norvell's a good coach. I think he did some good things at Memphis. I think he's had to battle through some things at Florida State. I know this is probably coming into the season. It was a make or break. It still might be a make or break type year for him. But there's also this part of me that likens them to that Miami squad that it may have been Mark Richt's first year at Miami as their head coach. It was when they debuted the turnover chain, and I think they went on a 10-game win streak. And actually, I believe Pitt was the one that knocked them off late in the season. And they went into the ACC championship either 10-1 or I think they were 11-1 maybe, or 10-2. I think it was 11-1, because it would have been a top 5 matchup in the ACC championship. But then Clemson just completely annihilated them. And then I think they got manhandled in the bowl game against Wisconsin. So it was one of those deals where you looked at it and you go, man, they had enough to beat the teams that were on their schedule, but they weren't really an elite, true top team. And that's what I'm wondering if this Florida State team is. But it's hey, if they keep winning and they keep taking care of business, can they sneak into the ACC championship? And that's where I don't know. Right. I know they got Clemson on the schedule. I know they've got Miami obviously on the schedule. They're going to have to play Florida.
Yep.
God, they got that dude 6'7". What is he, a 4'4", that receiver?
Yeah.
I mean, but then their quarterback went down. And that's what I thought. The quarterback went down. I thought,
But the backup looked good, man.
He did.
He looked really good.
And you could argue that the quarterback on the other team is the best in the conference.
Yep.
I'm trying to think who else is in that conference, but
DJ, but he's not doing anything. Malik Cunningham is that dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably someone I'm not thinking of right now, which is okay. I'm not this big ACC guy, but I would say Cunningham could probably go start for any of these other teams in the conference, possibly.
Yeah.
And yet another dagger to the heart of my dark horse to win the ACC. I did not predict them to win it. Let me be clear there. I still have NC State, and they are still alive and well. Mm-hmm. But I thought Louisville might be a team. It's a make or break year for their coach. I felt like had the best quarterback in the conference. Maybe they could go in and make a dark horse run. But now it's looking like Florida State, who I think might have been yours.
I did. I said Florida State. I thought they were going to have just talent-wise. And, man, I like that backup. I can't think of his name.
I can't either.
But, yeah, he looked good. I think my surprise, though, this week, here's because we're on surprise. Yeah. I'm going to go Syracuse.
Yeah.
Dino Babers and those boys are 3-0.
Yeah.
Big, man. I had that game kind of off to the side because, Purdue was kind of like our Cinderella story this year.
I know.
They were supposed to be, and
I had high hopes for them.
I did too, but I'm looking at Syracuse, man, and they've played some good ball. I mean, they opened up the season against Louisville, and they stomped Louisville 31-7. Then they played UConn 48-14. Won the walk-off with 11 seconds this past week, 32-29. They got UVA this week, which they could win. They should win that game. Then they have Wagner, which is the FCS opponent, which sets them up in 3 weeks, a potentially undefeated ranked game against NC State. And I don't think people understand, like, Dino Babers was on the hot seat this year coming into Syracuse. And his early tenure, they seemed to have some success. You kind of saw some things going. Then I don't really know what went left. Obviously, Syracuse isn't really normally in the national media, and they kind of get lost. But I'm looking at them, man, and it's like NC State has looked vulnerable. If they go in and they're motivated, and it's at home, so it's in the Dome, and they beat the NC State, man, that's really good. So that I love that game. I mean, Purdue's always going to give you a thriller whether they win or lose. And I actually thought Purdue was probably going to win this game, but Syracuse looked tough. Their offense it looked comparable. They could move the football and have to be able to walk to win that game, drive down the field. No time really left on the clock. Scored a touchdown with 11 seconds left. It was just a great game all the way through and through. So, biggest surprise, and as I'm looking at Syracuse's, they're about to get into the meat of their schedule. So they got UVA, Wagner, NC State, then Clemson, then Notre Dame, then Pitt. So within 3 weeks, they have, I call, the meat of their schedule. So, yeah, because it's NC State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, then FSU, then Wake Forest. So we'll see where they are over the next couple of weeks. But as of right now, man, I was, very impressed with what I saw from Syracuse. And as we know, man, the ACC, you just never know what can go. You don't know what NC State team you're going to get. You don't know. We'll see where Clemson's at in a couple weeks. Is the true freshman phenom going to be the starting quarterback? Clearly, we don't know what's happening at Notre Dame this year. And then Pitt, they lost one. And then, like I said, we don't know what Florida State's. So, Syracuse, man, I can see them winning, potentially if the ball goes their way, 7 games. They should be bowl eligible, I'm hoping, by the end. But great game against Purdue, man. That was my biggest surprise this past week.
Yeah. I got one more, actually, for surprise. And it's Penn State, dude.
Oh, against Auburn.
Yeah.
Man.
I didn't really
watch it.
Watch that game.
I didn't watch it.
But I was watching the score to that game, and then I'd kind of check in on it here and there. And, they just dominated Auburn. And this was supposed to be a revenge game for Auburn from last year. Penn State, they should have lost to Purdue to open the season. Kind of like you said, so the most Penn State thing, they just let them hang around, and then they go win the game that they shouldn't win. Well, that wasn't the case with Auburn. They dominated them. And I guess this Auburn situation, it has to just be bad. I know their quarterback situation isn't ideal, but I really thought coming into this season with Harsin and all the drama that happened throughout the offseason that maybe there would be this us against the world mentality. And I didn't project them to be at the top of the SEC or anything.
Right.
But I did project them to have like a big bounce back year, which doesn't necessarily have to include a win over Penn State, but my goodness, like, be competitive.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do what I did last year, because I remember last year after Penn State won that whiteout game against Auburn, I came on here and said, hey, I was right about the fact that I said, I think this is the year someone else could come out of the Big Ten and not other than Ohio State, or I should say Big Ten East other than Ohio State. I was just wrong on who I thought could do it, because I thought maybe this could be the year James Franklin gets over that hump, gets to the Big Ten championship, and then has an opportunity to play in the CFP. Because that was what I was saying. I think it's going to be a different team than Ohio State that wins the Big Ten and makes the CFP. You were saying you think it was going to be Michigan, which ended up being right. I was saying, gosh, it could be time for James Franklin, and then he I think it was the next week. It was like, what, a top 5, top 3 matchup with Iowa, loses his quarterback, lose the game, and then the season just kind of stumbled from there into a, bowl matchup with Arkansas where they just got manhandled in the Outback Bowl. But I'm not going to say that, because the one Penn State game I did watch, I wasn't impressed. I was very impressed with their corner.
Joey Porter.
Yeah, junior. But,
I'm looking at the box score. I thank God I have YouTube TV, because I actually wanted to go back and watch that game, because you can go watch replays. But it came out, man. They signed the number 1 running back in the country last year, and he went for 124 yards and 2 tugs. So total, Penn State ran for 245 yards against Auburn. So I feel like if you can do that against anybody, you're gonna have a good chance of winning. Because I'm looking at Clifford's line. Clifford, he went 4 for 19 for 178, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So I feel like if Penn State can run the football, which I think is what they're probably going to try to hang their hat on this year, it's like, can we run the football? Sean Clifford, please don't throw a turnover. Don't turn the ball over. I think, they should win a couple games, because, even looking at their schedule, it's pretty, after here they have Central Michigan, they have Northwestern, so that's 2 more tune-up games, which is going to lead them to the Maze out against Michigan, which by that point, as long as Michigan doesn't drop one, should be a top 10 matchup.
Yeah.
Top 10 matchup. Then after that, they have Minnie, who it's been impressive so far, man. Minnesota's looked good with Ibrahim. Ibrahim, whatever. I don't know how. Then they haven't
played anybody, but they finally got a Power 5 opponent and still dominated them.
They dominated them.
Colorado's horrible.
They're terrible. So, yeah, I'm not ready to declare Penn State's back. We'll see what they do against Michigan. Then they have Minnie. Then they have OSU. Then they have IU, Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan State. So, if they beat Michigan, then you're like, oh, man, but currently I don't see that happening.
Well, my question, too, is I don't think they beat Michigan either, but my question is their starting quarterback healthy by that point? Does he stay healthy all season? That's another big question mark.
So, he's already hurt game 1.
Do you have any other surprises?
No. It was a pretty it was an okay week in college football. So
it was an okay. I agree. It was an okay weekend. It was better than okay, like if your team won.
Yeah.
Even though if your team probably didn't play anybody noteworthy, unless your team is Oregon or Miami or A&M or whatever. But so disappointment. Why don't you start this one? I have one disappointment, and that's it. So hopefully you don't have the same one.
Disappointed. I'm gonna tell you where I was disappointed. Yeah, I'm gonna go there. I'm disappointed in Texas, man.
Okay.
I'm actually like really disappointed in Texas. Like I feel like this was and I actually watched that game because it was UTSA was lead. It was tied at halftime, and it was close to the fourth quarter because then they threw a pick six. So the score doesn't reflect really how that game looked.
Right.
And I felt like this was an opportunity for Texas to be like, we played a tight game against Bama. We're gonna. To your point, which you're like, I don't believe Texas at all. It's the Texas we normally get. They come out, they play high. That was the Super Bowl. And that's exactly what they look like, man. I feel like this was a game to come out. You know, you probably should have hung. It should have been I should have looked at that game and be like, oh, they're just manhandling UTSA. The 41-20 should have been oh, they put their backups in around the third, fourth quarter, and, that's why the score. No, if you really watch that game, that was a very close game till I think like 7 minutes left, 8 minutes in the fourth quarter, maybe 10. But it was a very close game because I remember I was texting some buddies about it. So it's just Texas, man. Texas being Texas, I think, yeah. That was kind of I expected them, I was really looking forward to see, okay, Sark, are you going to get these boys back up? Are you going to come out? They should blow the door. And don't get me, UTSA is no slouch. But if Texas wanted to play like they played last week, they should have blew the doors off of them. And after halftime, you're putting your second, third, fourth stringers in, letting them get some run, and you're getting prepared for your Big 12 run. So,
yeah, I'll never argue anything that's puts down Texas in any kind of way. I mean, I even texted you. I said, before that game even started, I said something to the effect of something about the meltdown when UTSA upsets Texas. I wanted to make that as a bold prediction, but I was like, I just don't know if UTSA has enough to really pull it off.
Yeah.
But then to your point, they had the possession with the opportunity to go take the lead, but then the pick six. And then obviously Bijan Robinson. I mean, he took over that game. So, and I lied. I have two disappointments. But
I actually have another one. But go ahead.
Okay. So I'll do my first one. My first disappointment is Mississippi State.
Yes.
Yeah. They had the game in total control. I'm not going to say they had the game won, right? It was 16-10 late in the third. But they were in control. And their offense was moving the ball well. Look, we talk about it all the time. LSU is just a team that they're athlete for athlete. Pretty much every game they play, they're either going to be better athlete for athlete or they're going to be just as good.
Yep.
And when you're playing a team like Mississippi State, LSU athlete for athlete is going to be they should win that game, right?
Right.
But Mississippi State playing well. That quarterback is very accurate. They were in control of the game. Up 16-10 late in the third, driving in LSU territory, looking to go take a 2-possession lead.
Yeah.
Then the game just completely does a 180. And this is where my disappointment for Mississippi State comes in, because I don't feel like LSU beat Mississippi State as much as Mississippi State beat Mississippi State. They gave them this game. And it was 4th and 1. I think they were on the LSU's 40-yard line. So they were kind of in that no man's land where they're not really going to kick a field goal, but it's 4th and 1. You got a chance here to go down and, in some regards, put the dagger in the heart, because LSU's offense was horrible. I mean, they looked horrible to this point. Yeah, that guy was making some plays with his legs, but outside of that, they had nothing going.
Yeah.
So it's 4th and 1. And they don't get it. They fail to convert. So you're like, uh-oh. LSU's got the ball. They've got good field position. They can go down and score. Well, Mississippi State stands pat. The defense comes out and forces a 3-and-out. So it's like, oh, okay. Then they muff the punt, and this is how their game ends. This is crazy. They muff a punt inside their own 10. LSU scores. They go 3-and-out. LSU scores. They go 3-and-out again. LSU scores. They throw an interception. Game over. So their last 4 possessions or opportunities for possessions of that game were a muffed punt, which was a turnover, back-to-back 3-and-outs, and an interception.
That'll do it.
After failing to convert on 4th and 1. Because usually you fail to convert on 4th and 1 and the whole momentum shifts. But then your defense comes out and gets a 3-and-out, and it's like, okay, we survived it. We survived it. We've got the ball back. Let's drive back down, kill some clock. It's 4th quarter. Muff punt inside the 10. I mean, even an offense that hasn't been doing anything all day, if you've got at least one athlete that's better than everybody else on the field, you're going to score a touch-down from inside the 10.
Right.
And it's not like Mississippi State has this stifling defense. It's more about LSU's offense just – I mean, we saw it. We saw it, that Florida State game, and they just they're one-dimensional.
Right.
And then I'm going to do my second disappointment, and you can do yours because this one's really quick, and it's actually more of it's one I was going to put on the surprise line, but I want to do it this way. My other disappointment is in College Game Day. for not going to Kansas Duke in week 4.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Come on, Kansas. Last week, I wanted to talk about Kansas, and I thought, no, let's wait one more week, kind of like we did with the UCLA thing. Now they are 3-0. Dude, for them, that's more games than they've won in a season probably in the last decade. I mean, or close to it. You know, they won 2 games last year, and one of them was to Texas. Yep. But they're 3-0. They're one of the top scoring offenses in the country. Now, look, they haven't exactly played Murderer's Row or anything. But
playing good football.
They're playing good football. What is it? Lance Leipold, guy from Buffalo. He's kind of being tossed around, I've seen, for that Nebraska job.
Yep.
But you know how it is. You get a job like Nebraska, open up this early in the season. Anyone who wins a game, you know,
it's potential.
Like, hey, they're looking at pets. Hey, this guy's, you know. Hey, this guy's dog, his owner won a big game last weekend. Maybe we put him on the hot board for the Nebraska job, whatever. So, but they're playing good ball. I would love to see them play spoiler for some teams in the Big 12. I know, Absolutely. Like some people are like, what are you talking about? I don't think they're like to a point where they're going to go compete for the Big 12. But I do think this is a team that could play spoiler, similar to what Iowa State kind of was
a couple of years back
before they became a team that was considered a quote unquote favorite.
Yep. And I agree. Like, I feel like game day, just to be in this point, if game day wants to go to the next level or continue with it, I think game day needs to stay away from bigger schools and go to the small school, because the small schools love it. Like, the turnout for App State was insane, amazing, and I thought it was cool. Like, I actually watched some of college game day today, and like Marty Smith's story about the life in Boone, North Carolina, and like I think that stuff is more intriguing to me because, you know, like Florida, because they're going to Florida, Tennessee, which is going to be cool. But I don't know, maybe we're in this, I feel like maybe it's just where I'm at in life as a 33-year-old guy. I'm like, I understand what Florida and Georgia is. I've been around the game long enough. Yeah, it would be cool to see a school like Duke and Kansas get some love and college game day being there. And for those universities, that means a ton. And I think it's a more unique storyline than Florida, Tennessee, which we're going to get every year.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could, for me, and I know this isn't going to appeal to everybody, but then you bring in Bill Self, you bring in Coach K, even though he's not Duke's coach anymore, he's still he'll still be coaching them in some capacity, I'm sure. I bet he still has an office, and I bet he's still watching. But you start to bring in the blue blood basketball aspect into the. I mean, like, there's just, to me, some cool things you could do there.
And like the quad at Duke is amazing. That'd have been a crazy place to have. Like it, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Who cares?
But
what?
Or get like Bill Self and Coach K could be your guest.
Your celebrity pickers.
You know what I mean? Or find some players. Get, Grant Hill and I don't know why
get JJ
Paul Pierce is the first. Yeah, JJ Redick. Oh,
that would have been a cool guest picker.
I'm trying to think of a Kansas, and the only guy I can think of is Paul Pierce, but I know there's
Joel Embiid. He's a good one.
He's a good personality.
That would have been a cool personality to bring on. Like, they missed the mark on that. And I feel like a bunch of people on Twitter even said that, like, they missed the mark on this Duke Kansas thing, which I think would have been a cool.
Yeah.
If I was in the game day office at this point, I'm like, let's find all the little teams that are like doing good, and let's just make this season about that. Unless you have like a day after Thanksgiving, 11-0 Ohio State versus 11-0 Michigan. Okay, like, that's must-see TV. But I'm just saying this as the casual fan. I'm not even a casual fan. I'm not really excited about Florida, Tennessee. Like, I'm just not. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what other – I just feel like this is the season for, like, the little guys that are taking all the attention. I mean, the Fun Belt, they're doing – I mean, I love that we just coined them that. The Fun Belt has been playing good football. You got Kansas playing some good football. Duke and obviously it's only 4 weeks into the season, but I feel like this has been the season of like chaos already. And I think, man, I think game day should embrace it. Like a couple years ago, they went to North Dakota State. Go to North Dakota State versus South Dakota. Like, that's a cool game. I think if I'm game day in this season, I think the casual fan will probably be more attracted to the smaller market team versus the big team. And I think just maybe it's just because that's a culture. You see this great flight from major cities into like you're just seeing. I just moved from a major city to a small suburb in Florida. I mean, it's kind of what's happening in culture. People are trying to get back to the American life, quote unquote, like in places like Boone, North Carolina, and Lawrence, Kansas, and Durham, North Carolina. Like those are those places that. Anyways, you get what I'm saying.
The thing is I kind of went back and forth. So when you kind of saw there being a chance of, okay, a 3-0 Kansas and a 3-0 Duke early in the season, I thought, okay, there's a chance College Game Day could go. But then when App State beat A&M and it killed an undefeated, probably top 10 or top 15 matchup of Miami A&M, which would have been College Game Day and College Station, I thought, well, if they're going to App State, there ain't no way they're going to follow up going to App State with going to Duke, Kansas. Then I saw the reaction that going to App State provided, and I'm going, like you just said, okay, they'll get that same
environment,
atmosphere if they go Kansas, Duke. And so then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe they will do it. And then we get Tennessee, Florida.
Well, they took the easy way out. But anyways, my last disappointment, I hate to say it, man, it's my second team in the Big Ten that I love so much, man, Nebraska. First 5 minutes of that game, we were texting, we're like, oh,
Mickey Joseph, let's go.
And then it was just like, wah, 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 wah. It was a man. I mean, and shout out to Venables. He took his foot off the gas. If he wanted to, he could have hung 70 on them. Yeah. Easy. Like, shout out to Venables, the respect to Mickey Joseph and that is to take his foot off the gas, let him die a slow death. Which, I mean, we seen in Nebraska, man, they got rid of their DC after their blowout loss. Like, goes back to your point we made a couple weeks ago, or it was just last week, about the control they're going to give Joseph. Are they going to give him the Dabble Sweeney audition of, this is your team. Right. You have full freedom. And you know what? Personally, I'm glad they're giving that to him. Let him have full control of this for the rest of the season. Let's see. And at this point, if I'm Nebraska, I'm like, all right, we just had the most chaotic first 3 weeks anybody could have. We flew to Ireland. We lost. We flew to Ireland and lost. We played Georgia Southern. Was it Georgia Southern that they lost to? Lost to Georgia Southern. We barely beat South Dakota. And OU came in here, our former rivals, and just took us to the woodshed. Great. The first quarter of our season, done. We still probably have 8 more games left. We have a 2/3. You're going there because they're going into a bye week. I'm interested to see if Mickey Joseph can just say, okay, we got through the chaos. That's the chaos. No one could have predicted those 4 weeks for us. It was chaotic. It sucked. Now we have 2 weeks to get our mind ready going into Big Ten play, and maybe we can make some noise in the Big Ten West. Because the Big Ten West is wide open. Purdue isn't looking good. Wisconsin got upset last week.
Minnesota is probably the
favorite currently because Iowa's looked bad. I think Mickey Joseph can really come in this like, okay, we're already 0-1 in Big Ten play. Let's at least try to go steal 6 games out of these next 8. If we can steal 6, and I believe that. I think if he can come in and steal 6 out of the next 8, he'll get a fair shot. I know there's a bunch of other names rolling around there. We'll see how this thing plays out. But I think he has to win at least 6 out of the next 8 to really feel. And say if he wins 6 out of the next 8, goes bowling, because that'll put them at 7 wins at that point, and wins the bowl game. So now we're talking 7 out of the last 9. After coming out of chaos into that, I think he'll get a fair shot. But I am disappointed. I thought, man, those first 5 minutes had me hype. Yeah. You know, defense, they played good. Then they freaking got the score. Then you're like, oh, here we go. This may be it. And here's the thing. If Dylan Gabriel, and I said this, I was like, if he doesn't go run for that 65-yard touchdown, I think the momentum was definitely on Nebraska's side. Yeah. You know, but unfortunately you let a quarterback run for 60-plus yards only for a touchdown.
Well, I'm starting to wonder, with Mark Whipple, like how good is he once he's off script? because his play script, I mean, it's like poetry in motion. I mean, I'm thinking about that first drive in Northwestern, first drive OU. I mean, I didn't watch Nebraska for the other two games that one they shouldn't have lost, and the other one was closer than it should have been. So I don't know what they looked like on those opening drives in those games, but it does seem like when he's on script, that offense is just clicking. Amazing. But then once he's off the script and it's, everyone's making their adjustments and things of that nature, and we're calling plays on the fly now, we're live, it just seems like they can't get anything going. But yeah, that was disappointing. I feel like I had something to say on that coaching search, but we've got pretty much the whole season to speculate. I do think there might be a little bit of delusion if people think Urban Meyer would take that job right now, or at least after that OU game. Yeah. Obviously, there was the report that he met with Trev Alberts, or the AD. If I missed his name, sorry, but the AD, and I'm sure it was more from a consulting standpoint, maybe with this deep wishful thinking. The thing about Urban Meyer that we all know is he's going to take a job somewhere where he's got a chance to win the conference immediately and be competing for a national championship by his second year. I mean, that's been his whole career. Like, he's always been in position to do that. Like, if you're a good enough coach where you can do that, why wouldn't you? Right. He waited till the right opportunity presented itself when he took the Bowling Green job. And they won back-to-back 8 and 9 win games, which for them, that was the first time that program had done that.
Right.
Then he's able to get the Utah job with Alex Smith. Remember what he did there. Then he gets Florida. And Florida, he's like, okay, I can literally recruit a national championship team without even having to leave my state. Right. And so, I don't see it. And I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to rabbit trail on a Nebraska coaching search conversation this week. So I'm going to stop myself there. If you're good on disappointment, we can move to overreaction, overrated. And I don't care who goes first on this one because I'm confident ours are not the same.
All right. So I can go overrated because I've been waiting to talk about this one. You know who my overrated is this week?
I know who it is.
You already know. The Michigan State Spartans. Tuck is coming. Hey, Tuck is coming. There's this meme floating around the internet from the Simpsons episode where everyone looks back at Bart and they're like, say it again. And he's like, it says Tuck is coming, and everyone burst out laughing. People are going to look at that score and going to be like, oh, but Brandon, it was close. No. That shows me you did not watch this game. Michael Penix Jr., who I said Washington was my dark horse for the Pac-12 this year, put on a clinic. Washington, they out-hit them, they outran them, they outpassed them. They beat them in every facet of the game, and it was marvelous to watch. I enjoyed it. And it was that one point where you're like, I think they got a fourth down stand, and you see Tuck yelling, and I'm like, uh-oh, are we about to have it? And no, they end up having a safety the next play. Dude, it was so great to see. And here's my criticism, because the secondary was what it was last year. It was atrocious. Let's just call it what it was. It was atrocious last year. You know who's the DB coach for Michigan State? Mel Tucker. That's all I'm saying, bro. And we're gonna get that tightened up. No, you're not. No. Michigan State is who I thought they were. And I said it at the top of the season. I thought it was a shout out to Mel Tucker, man, the finesse god. I mean, the dude got a big time contract, and it worked out perfect for him. His name, he did what he did at Michigan State. His name was hot on the coaching trail. Michigan State put their money where their mouth was, which is so great for them. I'm so happy they did that. But my biggest concern coming into the season was this, and I said it. He struck gold with Kenneth Walker, who was I'm not going to say generational talent, but he was a game-changing talent at the college football level. Kenneth Walker III won them about 3 games by himself, 4 games by himself. And I said, I was like, I don't know if if Mel Tucker can replicate the success he had last year with the same strategy as I'm just going to go mine the transfer portal every year and hopefully I strike gold on one of these guys. Because that's everyone last year, they were all Mel's. He has a whole transfer portal team. They're treating it like NFL free agency, and they know the deal when they get here. And don't get me wrong, like there's a few transfer portal darlings every year that we're like, wow. But let's just be honest, Trey, since the revealing of the transfer portal, there's very few hits that come in every year where you're like, wow, thank God that kid came in. You don't hear that as much as we like to claim that we do. And my concern is this, obviously, is if a guy's in the transfer portal, like Kenneth Walker was a special situation. The dude's at Wake Forest. He gets out. He was on no one's board last year as the best running back. Nobody's board in the transfer portal. So shout out to his team for finding that. But it's like most of these guys are in the transfer portal. They're in the transfer portal for a reason. One, they're not playing where they're at. So that's a big part of it. Whether they come from a big program or not, they're not playing where they're at, which normally shows me, and now we know that sometimes programs could be you didn't get along with a head coach or your position. That 9 times out of 10, though, 8 times out of 10, you're leaving because you couldn't hack it. Right. Like you're not cracking the starting line. And I know I hear, hey, my coach didn't want me. I hear all that. It's you got to the next level and you couldn't crack it. And I don't care how many guys who brings in from Georgia, because that was a big thing. They brought a guy in from Georgia this past year, which I was nervous about. Like, man, okay. And they brought a guy in from SEC schools. And bro, they are exactly who I said they were going to be. They have a mediocre offense. Don't get me wrong. Keon Coleman is nice. I like him at the receiver position. We'll see who Peyton Thorne really is, because I feel like everyone – now, we'll give him this. He does show up on – the kid has some stones on fourth down. Like, when it's fourth down and he has to get it, I will give Peyton Thorne that. But that defense, atrocious. Michael Penix looked like a Heisman Trophy contender. But I might say that wasn't Michael Penix I saw at Indiana, and maybe that's who he would have been behind a competent O-line and a great coaching staff throughout his time at Indiana. So I'm happy to see him bounce back. But I think Michigan State is exactly who I said they were going to be. I said they were going to be a 7-5 team. Right. I believe they were that last year. Kenneth Walker just saved them. The back end is still atrocious. I think Ohio State's going to have a field day with them. I think Michigan's going to – I'm convincing my wife to even let me go to that game, even if it's by myself, because I want to be in the big house when we just run amok on them. But that's my biggest overrated, man. I think Michigan State is who Michigan State is. I love Mel Tucker. I think he's a good coach. I don't know if he can bring that type of consistent success to Michigan. D'Antonio did it for that era, and he did it off three. And he did it his way. 3-star guys, under-recruited guys. We're going to be tough. I think that's how you build a contender at Michigan State. I just don't feel like Michigan State will ever be the team that can go out with the likes of Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, Clemson, SC, Michigan, and out-recruit them. The funding's different. The notoriety's different. Everything that comes with it's just Michigan State's a good Tier 2 team. Tier 2, Tier 3 school that's going to play the upset every now and then. And every couple years, like if you take the D'Antonio era out, every couple years they field a decent team that's like, okay, that's what they're supposed to do. But elite, never that. And unfortunately, they just gave Mel Tucker $95 million to prove that. And so if he wants to keep doing that, I'm fine. I love it. Like, I love it. Keep trying to – and I'm sure he's probably beat us once or two more times over the 9-year span, but anybody that even watched the game when we played them last year, we got robbed of the touchdown before the halftime, and Kenneth Walker did Kenneth Walker things. And it just made me so happy, bro. I enjoyed every bit of that beatdown, every bit of it. So that's my overrated Michigan State.
All right. Well, mine is kind of an overreaction more. I'm going to talk about this Missouri State-Arkansas game, okay? And nobody watched it unless you are a fan of one of those two teams. And the reason why I say it so emphatically is because, one, that's not a game you would just watch as a casual fan or a big fan looking for a good game to watch. But it wasn't even on like a channel. It was only on the ESPN app, which most people, when they're watching games, they're only going to watch a game that's on the app if it's their team, right? Because you can't just flip back and forth channels or whatever. But anyways, Missouri State almost won that game, like legitimately. And there was some overreaction to, or from different aspects of it. From the Arkansas fan base of, oh, man, we're this, we're that, we're unprepared, we're getting out coached, which all that was true. I'm not going to say we weren't prepared, but I'm going to say we were out coached. And Pittman even acknowledged that. But then there's also from the outside of, oh, they're a top 10 team. They're not a top 10 team. They can't even, they're about to lose to an FCS school. Here's just what I want to say about this game. It was a very weird game for Arkansas players and coaches, but for two totally different reasons. And I'm so glad we won, because I was not worried at all until we got midway through the fourth quarter, and I thought, oh no, this might actually happen. Because my prediction going into this game was that it was going to be very close until deep into the third quarter, and then Arkansas would start to pull away. It was Bobby Petrino's return to Fayetteville for the first time since the whole incident that happened, 11 years ago. His team was going to be ready. He himself was going to be ready. He's been waiting for this moment for the past 11 years. He had former players there. In fact, Joe Adams, who was one of the star players at Arkansas during the Petrino era, just got inducted into the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame, I want to say the night before. That game. So there were a lot of players at that game that were former Petrino guys. Those guys love Petrino. Okay. I interviewed Ryan Mallett on a podcast, the way him and then some of the other players that reached out, as a result of that interview, when we started getting some of those clips up on social media, they love that dude. And if anything, even if they don't love him, they acknowledge that he was an offensive genius.
Right.
And what was crazy during that game was they just put on a masterpiece. Now, he's evolved his offense since he was at Arkansas to fit a dual threat quarterback, right? You saw what he did with Ryan Mallett and then what he did with Lamar Jackson, two totally different styles of quarterbacks, but producing the same type of results. Yep. He still runs that pro style scheme, but he's found a way to implement a dual threat quarterback to just make it click. And that's what he has at Missouri State, Jason Shelley, which I know this. Yes, he's from Frisco Lone Star. I was going to say some of our listeners will know that connection because he went to Frisco, or he went to Lone Star High School in Frisco, Texas, led them to the state championship game
twice, right?
He only got them there once.
Okay.
But they went on some deep playoff runs.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah. I remember him.
But took him to he almost took him, I think, in 3A or whatever it was. They were at a lower division because they were a newer school. And then his senior year, I believe it was, they made it to the 5A state championship game. And they think they were the first football team out of Frisco to make it. And I can't remember. I think there was a Frisco High team that made it back in the 50s or something, something like that. I think, maybe not. But anyways, he could play. He was a Division I player, and he ended up, I'm not sure his whole story is how he got from Utah to Missouri State.
Utah to Utah State, then Utah State to Missouri State.
So he has that going. It's his second year in Petrino's system. I think if you look at Petrino's history coaching quarterbacks, when he's got someone in his system for the second or third year, magic happens. I mean, Ryan Mallett took Arkansas to the Sugar Bowl. Lamar Jackson wins a Heisman. Tyler Wilson, even though it wasn't his second year in the system, it was his first year as a starter, being in the system for a few years, gets Arkansas a top 5 finish, wins the most games in a season in school history. So, you knew there was going to be But here's where I talked a long way around to say this. From the player's perspective, they're thinking about these next 2 weeks. they're not worrying about the history with Petrino and all that. They were too young to even know or care about any of that stuff anyways. They're flat, not because, Coach Petrino's on the other sideline. They're flat because they're thinking about A&M and Bama the next 2 weeks, where if we find a way to win both of those games, now all of a sudden playing for an SEC championship isn't out of the question and possibly going beyond that. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm not even saying they're going to beat Bama. There's a lot of concerns I have that I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. But I'm just saying, you beat A&M, you get a top 10 matchup with Alabama, with College Game Day in Fayetteville. Crazier things have happened. You find a way to win that game, just like last year. I mean, it was a one-possession game. And you're looking at the rest of your schedule going, okay, we've got a chance. It's not going to be easy. There's definitely some games we could lose. We could definitely lose that Mississippi State game. We could definitely lose that Ole Miss game. We could definitely lose that game at BYU. But you're not looking down at the schedule going, oh, man, we've got a team that's just so much more talented than us, like a Georgia or a Bama or something like that if you get past Alabama is what I'm saying. So they're thinking about that. But from a coaching standpoint, what I don't know if people really realize is that since the situation with Petrino, every coach that's been hired at the University of Arkansas has basically been in his shadow, including the one that's there now. And no one's going to want to hear this in the Arkansas fan base, but yes, Pittman had a phenomenal season. Yes, he's restored the program from where it ended up being. He still has not reached the same heights of what Petrino did. Now, I believe he will, but to me, that's kind of that threshold to finally get out of that guy's shadow, so to speak, is either go win 10 games and go to a New Year's Six Bowl, or finish the season 11-2 or whatever, and be in the top 5, top whatever. To me, that's when it's like, okay, we found a guy. We don't need to, because at least me as a fan, I just think, man, what Petrino did, he captured that lightning in a bottle, and just so. Anyways, there's that hanging over, and Pittman acknowledged, he's like, I got outcoached. He outcoached me. And even after the game, they kind of embraced for a minute, and someone caught it on camera. They read his lips, like Pittman leaned in and like said some things in Petrino's ear, and then he said something like, go do it, take this thing all the way. But then the last thing he said, you can call me. And so some people are speculating, like, I wonder if Pittman was going, hey, because if you look at what Petrino does offensively, it's exactly what Pittman wants to do offensively. He's just not like he's not an offensive coordinator, right? And I love Kendall Briles, so I want to keep him as long as we can keep him. But I do think he'll have some opportunities to be a head coach soon. But what I'm saying is I believe that Pittman wants to run a pro-style offense with a dual-threat quarterback, and that's essentially what Petrino does. But what Petrino is a genius at is, I've said this before on this podcast, is what he calls FTS, feeding the studs. He has his best players, and he always has creative ways to get them the ball, and they make plays. And so, anyways, it was just a weird game. Here he is. He's got all these former Arkansas alum who are, like, supporting him. I mean, they want the Hogs to win. And it was crazy because he ran, like, some 4th-and-1 plays that it's like literally the same play he ran against Georgia back in 2010, where it was a play action and Chris Gregg is wide open down the field, runs the same play. And so as a fan, you're going, oh my gosh, this is like watching Arkansas in 2010 and 11, but it's in this shape of a FCS team.
Right.
Anyways, so it was a weird game. I'm not going to overreact to that. I don't think that's indicative of what the rest of our season will look like, or do we need to be worried? No, I think it was a weird game. I think it was good that, on paper it was a trap game, right? In between South Carolina and A&M Bama. But I don't know. I do have some concerns about my Hogs, just, on the back end defensively, our receivers. These next 2 weeks are going to be pretty telling. And I'm done with that. I'm out. I'm good. But I needed to get that out.
Understood. Completely understood. We're moving on to week 4, man. What we're looking forward to before we wrap this thing up. Dude, I'm gonna tell you who I'm looking forward to in week 4. It's probably not on most people's radars, but it is on mine. I think I had 2, but I want to see where your other one lands.
Okay.
TCU SMU.
Ooh, yeah.
For Texas people, that's a good, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
Yes.
That's a great game. You got Sonny Dykes, who is coaching at SMU, who's up at TCU right now. SMU's pretty look good. TCU's undefeated. SMU's 2-1. Is it like the Battle of the Frying Pan? It's something they play for something like that. But dude, that's a big deal because what most people don't understand is TCU and SMU are normally comprised of that Dallas Metroplex of talent.
Right.
A lot of those guys, they know each other. They've been playing against each other since Pee Wee. It's to me that's, and you know, I've been to the TCU SMU game after living, and it's a fun game to go to if you've never been. And so I like Sonny Dykes. I love what he did at SMU. I feel like he's kind of been one of the coaching hires that people haven't really paid attention to coming into this season because of so much everything else is going on.
Yes.
But I've been trying to keep an eye on TCU to kind of see if he could take that SMU plan that he took with, hey, come home, let's make Dallas great, you know, which I thought was really dope what he did at SMU and led those boys to be pretty successful. Seeing if he can now do that same approach at TCU, which probably has, I would say, a little bit more funding going into that football program, being part of a big conference, and essentially almost being, I say for the kids you're recruiting now, it's probably had a bigger impact name-wise than SMU has. Obviously, if you grow up in Dallas, you understand what SMU was. It's the aura that's never left.
Right.
But I think over the last decade, TCU has probably been the more prominent program. I would say that because even when they recruited my brother, and that was back when I think Dalton was finishing up there or a couple other guys were there. And, you know, wow. And TCU's put a lot of money into their facilities, a lot of money into their football program, which they actually do this really cool thing. When you come up for your visit, it's very unique. They put all the recruits right in front of the boosters, but you don't know. So, you know, my dad, when we took Ryan up there for this recruiting visit, this guy kept talking to us, like some older guy. And my dad was like, man, this dude keeps talking to us. And he's like, oh, watch this. Watch what they do when the players run out. Like, watch how the kids, I think it's so great that we do that. And so my dad was like, fine, like, so, you know, what do you do? And the guy, like, tells him or whatever. And my dad's like, he looks at his ring and he goes, oh, did you graduate from here? He's like, oh, yeah, love TCU, man. Great. And I was like, this is genius. They sit you right in front of their, like, most powerful boosters.
Right in front of the money.
Right in front of the money. And these guys are pitching the program the entire game. That's nothing to do why I want to see this game. But it's always one of my favorite recruiting memories, even though it wasn't for me. It was for my brother. But I'm excited about that game. It's on ESPNU. I'm going to watch it. Just really interested to see what Sonny Dykes and just living in Texas in that Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. It's a good game, and I want to watch it.
And then Rhett Lashley being at SMU, who was Dykes' coordinator when they first took over the SMU program and helped, you know, get it to that 10-win stature. Dude, mine's gonna probably feel a little out of left field, but it's honestly a game I'm looking forward to watching. It's really hard for me right now to think of anything other than Arkansas A&M because that's such a big game for us.
You.
And like to your point, Florida, Tennessee, I'm just not as amped up, especially after Florida almost losing to South Florida. But you could make the argument it's a trap game. That Clemson Wake, I'm just looking at some of the top 25 matchups. It just doesn't, dude. It's this Stanford Washington. And because one, you've obviously been very high on Washington since before the season started. And essentially everything you've been projecting them to do is exactly what they've been doing. Stanford's got a good squad.
They do.
And I want to see this matchup because I watched Stanford play USC and they moved the ball at will against USC. It's just when they got inside the 5, they would turn it over. It was like the wildest thing. Then they made some adjustments in the second half, and they really sort of stifled USC's offense. But Stanford, if you don't know, and especially if you're getting back to that DFW area, they have a young man by the name of E.J. Smith, who is the son of Cowboys legend Emmitt Smith, and he does a little bit of it all. He kind of is filling that same role that like Christian McCaffrey. Was it Bryce Love? Where they get that running back who kind of do a little bit of everything. And so that's what he's doing. Plus, I want to actually watch Washington because you talk about what they have the potential to be, then they go out and do it, and then we talk about it, and I just still haven't watched them, and I want to see them because they could make the Pac-12 interesting. And it's a late game. I'm growing very fond of having a good late game on once the dust settles, because I'm going to be probably stressed. I'm either going to be pissed off or I'm going to be very excited, because that's going to, when that game starts, it'll be about when the Arkansas game is ending. And so it'll either give me something to like unwind to because I'm on like this ultimate high, or it's going to give me something to kind of like, you know, build myself back up through so I can get a good night's sleep if we lose. But man, that's mine. I just, outside of that, I don't know.
You know what else I'm kind of looking for? And I don't know how good it'll be, but this USC-Oregon State game.
Yeah, I know. Oregon State's a little sneaky.
They've been a little sneaky. I don't think they'll beat USC, but I think they could be a good game. And then outside of that, obviously we got Whiskey versus Ohio State.
Yeah.
So there'll be some interesting games, but I'm actually most looking forward to probably the SMU TCU. I think that's going to, obviously outside of Michigan opening up conference play.
Yeah, especially with that one being right out of the gate. I'll keep an eye on that Kansas Duke, but I don't really care for that game as much as I would have loved to see how they could have
game day. How
game day.
Yeah. Oh, and then they got your boys at Iowa State as a favorite over Baylor. So
interesting.
If you guys gamble, I feel like that's free money as Baylor's the underdog.
At Iowa State. Yeah, I guess we'll see. Well, all right, man. Yeah, like you said, it was an okay week last week.
Okay week of football. So we're hitting conference play, starting to ramp up. I think, this is where we really find out the men of the men and the boys of the boys, and who are preseason Cinderellas and who actually has it.
Who are the contenders and who are the pretenders?
Yep. We know Georgia is probably going to win it again, so I don't see anybody beating them, bro.
I don't either.
I rewatched the game.
I'm hoping for a good first-round matchup. Like, here's what needs to happen. Bama needs to lose during the season, and then they need to lose in the SEC championship game. That way, the first-round game for the CFP, I say first round, the other game, the 2-3 matchup for the CFP will be a good game. Like, give me a USC Michigan game.
I would live for that.
Yeah, something like that, and then then Georgia can just whoever it is.
I've looked at Georgia's schedule, and they play Kent State this week, demolish them. They play Missouri next week, gonna demolish them. They play Auburn the week after that, demolish. Vandy the week after that, demolish. Then they get a bye week. Then they play the largest cocktail party against Florida. Going to probably demolish them.
Yeah, coming off a bye week, too.
Then they play Tennessee. Now, here's what I'm going to say. I don't think Tennessee can. But if Hendon Hooker keeps looking good, but they haven't really played anybody, so I think this week will say a lot of who he is. But they're going to beat Tennessee. Then they play Mississippi State. This is the most intrigued game I do have on their schedule is against Kentucky. How good will Will Levis and Mark Stoops look by that time of year?
The problem is Kentucky's scheme is very dependent on the front. Yep. And they're just not going to move Georgia's front. They're just not. And it's a creative scheme, though, so maybe they can throw some things in there. I like your Tennessee play better just because of what they do offensively. The problem is it's like Kirby Smart has cracked the code on how to defend the RPO game. And a big part of it is because he's figured out what certain guys have to be able to do. And then he goes and he's able to recruit the guy with the ability to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, what he's uncovered, not everybody can do because you have to have a certain type of player at sort of that linebacker safety hybrid spot. Yep. Like, you got to have a unique type of athlete. And then, of course, the fronts he puts together. I mean, when you're getting pressure with three-man rushes, you can defend anything on the back end. And, like, I just – to your point, I don't see it happening. But, yeah, I would say I like Tennessee more than I would Kentucky, I think. Right? Just because I feel like Kentucky, their stuff is they're a line of scrimmage. Tennessee's not. Tennessee's going to spread you and make you defend the entire field. And I think that is more probable or has more of a chance against Georgia than a team that, is a line of scrimmage.
It's going to come down to Hendon Hooker, man. Is he really who we think? Is he really who they're trying to make him see? And I hope so. I like the guy, I think.
And is this Georgia defense better? Like, how's that
feels
possible?
Like it is, bro. It feels like it is.
It does.
I went and watched the game against South Carolina yesterday. I watched the replay of it, and I was just like, it's unfair. It's unfair. Brock Bowers is a freaking Gronk 3.0.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Anyways.
No, you're not beating Georgia.
I know. I guess I need to start that. No one's beating Georgia.
It's just not happening.
It's crazy. I guess it's kind of nice that it's a different team, but I just don't want it to be the same thing where they go undefeated, they get beat in the SEC championship, and then you get
two SEC schools.
They bump Georgia to 2, put Bama at 1, or they'll put Bama at 3. And when I say Bama, I mean a 1-loss Bama. But or if they're both undefeated, going to the SEC championship, it doesn't even matter. They're both getting in.
Right.
What I would prefer is if they're both going to get in, play them against each other in the first round.
Yeah. Let's do it.
That way we at least get – well, at that point, you'll get 2 good games.
Yep.
Or just don't play the SEC championship. Say both these teams are going to be in anyways. We're just going to let them play in the CFP.
It would be nice.
But, all right.
All right, fans. Well, it's been real. We appreciate you guys. Hey, enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully your team wins this week. And until next one, peace.
Peace.